got somebody.
I'm recording.
No, I got my blood pressure set. I need to control.
Oh, you don't need that part yet. That's all.
Why don't you grab a chair and come up?
Oh,
You
grab
don't need
chairs
the
and
one that
come
you
up.
have controls in yet.
okay, so okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bring your boat.
Are you recording?
Yeah.
Actually, that's pretty smart.
Oop, I don't want to be in there.
Send that to me.
Do they all make noises like that?
Yeah.
The one at my mom's, it was like so depressing.
Miss Ma'am, you know how almost, I don't know if all clinics do this, but you know how on the video you showed us that the clinics had TVs for everyone? How loud are those? I imagine they can't be that loud.
Do you want to sit over there so you can see? You sure? Sit wherever you want. Usually we give them headphones.
Okay.
So,
That makes more sense.
yeah. Do you remember 9/11?
Sorry?
9/11, when that happened?
I don't, do I remember it?
Yeah. Well, you know what
Like
9/11,
three.
9/11 is,
Mhm.
yeah.
I don't remember that.
What a rough start to the conversation.
Back in my day,
Yeah.
I get a job.
I was working in dialysis, and we're, doing our thing as workers, and all of a sudden the patients started freaking out, and they were calling us all over to watch the TV with them, and that's how we seen all that go down. As soon as we got to the TVs, because our TVs used to be up, some of them have they're like right next to their seat, but ours were more up on the wall. And as soon as we all went over, all of us nurses started going over to watch. It was, that's when the Twin Towers had already been hit, and you could see some things you go through with your, with your patients. Okay. You guys, can you guys see?
Could we turn the IV where the cords are like not right there in front? Thanks.
Like that?
Perfect.
Okay. So over here, you're going to have your mute button. Remember I said we're not going to turn down the machine, but we do use the mute button. One of the first things you're going to do if the machine's going off, and this is a question on one of the machine tests, I think it's in Hemo 2. Your machine's alarming. What's the first thing you do when you go over? Everybody always wants to say some kind of patient care. The first thing you do when you go over is push mute. Because that tells everybody in the unit that somebody is over here taking care of this patient. I'm going to push mute, and then we're going to do whatever we gotta do. New treatment. So every time you start your patient, you're going to do new treatment. You're going to see things on there from your last patient. So you're going to see like the fluid removal and things like that, but it's resetting it so that it knows it's going to start dialysis and it's going to start all over again. Reset is a big one. This one's going to be your best friend. So all the time when you're stringing these, you're recircing them, air gets in there, they shut off. Reset's going to be a great friend. It helps reset the pump so we can start it all over again. Over here, your air detector. So if your air detector goes off, remember I said we put the line in here, it's going to clamp down. This is going to alarm, and it's going to let you know that it has found air, or it thinks it found air. Blood leak detector. We have two different blood leaks, and you'll learn that a little more in complications. We have a minor blood leak and we have a major blood leak. And how we're going to determine if it's minor or major is first, of course we're going to look. If there's blood all over the place, well that's obvious. It's a major blood leak. Lines came out, there's a crack in the dialyzer, something. We came over and there's blood everywhere. But you come over and you look, it says blood leak, and there's nothing. There's no, you don't see any blood anywhere, the lines are hooked to the patient, everything looks good, you looked for cracks, you don't see anything, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take one of these hemo sticks, or some of them you'll see, I have a couple down there. One says hemo sticks, one says blood leak detector, same thing. You're gonna take this and you're gonna put it underneath like the bottom of your dialyzer, anything that's leaking. If it comes up positive, that's a major blood leak. That means shut it down, take everything down, we gotta start over. If it's a minor blood leak, this comes back negative, you don't physically see anything, we can go ahead and restart them. If someone has a major blood leak, this comes back positive, and maybe there's a crack in the dialyzer or something like that, why do you think that's dangerous? What do you think could happen?
Is it bacteria?
Yeah, bacteria's better.
Yep, bacteria is a huge one, and then the other one is air. So air embolism or bacteria. That's why if it's major, if this comes up positive, we want to shut it right down.
What are those called again?
This, some of them will say blood leak, and some of them will say hemostick. Dialysate flow on or off. We're always going to have the dialysate flow on, unless there's a problem with the water. So we want dialysate. We want our acid, our bicarb, and our purified water to go in. That's how dialysis is working. That's how we're flushing things out. That's how they're getting their electrolytes back. But let's say we know there's a problem with our water, or where we said there's 2 or more patients have a fever, we gotta shut it down. You can push this off. It's automatically gonna shut that water or that purified water, that dialysate, from coming to this machine.
And what is that called, that button called?
Dialysate flow. You can see here the minor and major go with that. Bypass. Bypass can be on for a whole bunch of different things. When you learn more about how to troubleshoot, you can try to get that bypass button off. If we bypass the water or the dialysate flow, bypass is going to go on. If the machine shuts down, something alarms, it's automatically going to go to bypass. It's kind of like a safety feature. Prime, that's part of our board here. We're going to prime our lines. So we're going to prime them with saline. We do that for 2 reasons. That's to get the germicide out, and we want to get all the air out. And those are definitely test questions. But air and germicide. Override. If you get that, this kind of goes, you see this little line kind of goes right here, all 3 of these go together. If we have a blood leak, you're going to have to override that machine. If we want to keep it running, you're going to have to override it. It's like a safety feature. It doesn't want us to do it, or it doesn't know if it's major, so we kind of have to push that override button. Our SVS, or our sequential dialysis, we can use that for a couple different things. I'm going to show you where the button is, but I think I'm going to explain that later. And then your UF. Okay. UF. Does anybody remember what UF stands for? Ultrafiltration. Good. And what is ultrafiltration?
It's like extra filtration. Make the iron, whatever it was. Like
Oh,
filtrate.
isn't that like the
whatever.
next level of the purified water and ultrafiltration?
That's ultra purified water. But for us, UF or ultrafiltration is water removal. So if almost all patients are going to have that ultrafiltration on. If you have someone that urinates and we don't want to take any fluid off of them, which we had that conversation the other day, I would turn that UF button off. So I'm going to clean their blood. They need their blood cleaned. They're not filtering their waste, but they're removing water, so we don't need to do that. We don't want to make them more sick, removing fluid that maybe they don't have. So we would make sure that was off. This is for your blood pressure. You're gonna set your blood pressure. So you're gonna set it for every 30 minutes, and I'm gonna show you how to do that. But let's say you come over and they don't feel good. It's not time for their blood pressure yet, they don't feel good. You're just gonna push stat. We're gonna override that 30-minute thing, and we're just gonna push stat. We're gonna take one now. Heparin on and off. Pretty much that's always gonna be on, unless you have someone that's allergic to heparin.
Is there another alternative other than heparin?
Yep, we do saline flushes. So, and when we start doing our math next week, you're gonna love saline flushes. Everybody loves that part.
Wait, did
When
you
we
say
do our
math?
Like what kind
So
of
we
math?
had to do math yesterday.
Oh, we do everything. We do statistics and algebra, and no, we don't do any of that.
Oh,
I wouldn't
thank
teach this
God.
class if we did that.
I don't
Um,
like how
It's simple math.
Okay.
It's adding,
Oh,
subtracting,
yeah, okay.
things like
I
that.
like that type of math.
Grade school math.
People get a little confused when we have to start adding in things. How much do I add?
Oh.
When do I add it in? How do I add it in? Like, it gets a little more confusing. Flushes always get people. So, if they don't get heparin, they're gonna get saline flushes. And it'll be by doctor's order. We just have to add it into their bowl. So that way by the end, their fluid came off and the fluid we gave them came off. I'm gonna go into the machine now and I can show you how some of these other things work. So when I go into the machine, this one's not touch screen. So anything we do, we have to arrow over. I'm gonna arrow over to dialysis and I'm gonna push confirm. And then I have to check my concentrate. That's one of the first things you wanna do. I'm in a 2K. Now, if I really had a patient on, I'm gonna check my order. I'm gonna make sure that my order says 2K, look at my 2K, and then I'm gonna confirm it. It always asks you to confirm it twice. So your first screen, the biggest one you always wanna go to is home. When you go to the home screen, it kind of brings up everything that you need at first to put your orders in. So I think I want you guys to kind of be able to write your notes as you go. 23. We're on 23 right now. It says like, it has a picture of like dialogue, status box, all that kind of stuff. This is your status box. Anything that happens, that comes up, if there's an alarm, anything like that, it's gonna be in that status box. So it could say air detector, it could say blood leak. If your battery's gone, it's gonna come up and it's gonna say 9 volt. Anything that's on there, it will come up. If you have something in the red, you can't test your machine. So this whole status box has to be green before you can test your machine. If you can't get it out of the red and you can't test your machine, you can't put a patient on. This is your dialogue box. That's where your blood pressure and your pulse are gonna be. So every 30 minutes when you come around and you check your patient, they're gonna be right there. Your arterial and your venous pressures. That's gonna be from your needles, from your access, or from your catheter. When, in particular, when we're looking at arterial and venous pressure, when we're putting somebody on, we wanna watch those pressures. If the pressures are rising, if they're rising tremendously, rising too fast, it could mean that somebody's infiltrated. So that's one of the biggest things when you turn somebody on, you wanna look at their pressures and you wanna look at their access. Also ask them how they feel. We wanna catch an infiltrate before we turn this pump up and we're pumping that blood, super fast into that infiltrate. TMP, that stands for transmembrane pressure. And that's kind of one of your vocab words. Transmembrane pressure can be the result of a couple different things. So, of course, in your dialyzer, we have transmembrane pressure. This number or this transmembrane pressure can come up, it can make the machine go off for a variety of reasons. Something as simple as the patient moved. Patient moved their arm, our arterial pressures went through the roof, our transmembrane pressure is going to do that. Anytime something alarms, it's going to affect our transmembrane pressure. If our machine is clotting, if we're clotting in our dialyzer, if any of our chambers are clotting, so we have our arterial chamber and our venous chamber, if any of them are clotting, it's going to make our arterial and our venous pressure go up and our transmembrane pressure. So if TMP comes up, it's usually a result of something else. You have to figure out what's going on to fix your transmembrane pressure. This treatment paused. When I'm ready, my patient is here, I have my needles in, I'm ready to go, then I can push confirm, and now my treatment's running. If I put somebody on and I don't push that treatment running, it's not doing anything. It's gonna run, it's gonna count down, it's gonna make it look like the machine is on, but you're not cleaning their blood and you're not taking any fluid out. So if someone doesn't double check your machine or you come over and you do that for an hour, somebody's gonna be real mad. They've been sitting there for an hour and nothing's been happening. Your UF goal, your ultrafiltration goal. So if ultrafiltration is water, then what do you think that is? What do you think that goal is?
How much water you want?
What's that?
Like how much water you want to take off? Like
Yes. So how much water does your patient have on? How much fluid do they have on? And that's where our math comes in. We have to figure that out. So we have to figure out how much fluid they have on, how much we're going to put in that box. Your UF time is going to be by your order. So that's just their treatment time. If they're 4 hours, we're going to put 4 hours in. Here, this patient was 3 hours. Your UF rate, that's your ultrafiltration rate, that's going to automatically calculate. You don't have to calculate that. That's going to go by your ultrafiltration goal and your time. And what that means is that 300 could change when we it's not going to change. That means it's going to take off 300 kilos or whatever you want to call it, 300 cc's per hour. So it's going to divide this for however much time that that person's on, and it's going to do that. Now this, because this 300 rate and we don't have them running, you can't change it until you actually put somebody on. But normally, this is going to come down to 1. We can do math. We know it's 3 kilos. We're doing it for 3 hours. That's going to be a kilo per hour. Your UF removed, that's going to change. So that's going to be, the longer they're on, that's going to be their number of how much they removed. So let's say if I'm taking off 1 kilo an hour, when I come back in an hour, it should say 1 kilo. Your dialysate flow. That is how fast your dialysate is coming in. That could differ between your patients. So, remember I said if you had that little old lady that was 90 pounds, 90 years old, she is going to be on a lower dialysate. Her heart is not going to be able to handle that coming in. Her order is going to be different. Standard, most people are usually at 8. But for some people, we have to change it. People who have heart issues will have to change it. We'll also have to change their pump speed. Temperature, that's self-explanatory. We all know what temperature is. Our machine, and if you look, when I arrow over, it tells me what my temperature should be up at. We're only at 27. If it is not between 35 and 38, we can't run it. We can't run it. what would happen if we pull out their blood and we're putting it back in at a much lower temperature?
A shot.
Shock, hypothermia, things like that, yep. What happens if the temperature is too hot?
Dry stuff up. Hurt areas of the body from the heat.
Yep, so it's called hemolysis. And hemolysis is destruction of the red blood cells. So if we already have people that are anemic, they're already not making red blood cells, and now we're killing the ones that we're putting them back in their body, we're going to have some serious issues. Conductivity. Your conductivity is a product of your acid and your bicarb. So that's a product of those mixed together. That conductivity changes. So depending on what bath you have them on or what acid you have them on, 1K, 2K, 3K, it's going to change your conductivity. But everything has to be in the green. And then this one, your real time to date, that's going to be, it goes along with this. How much fluid did I remove? And maybe I've done an hour of treatment. So that's counting down your treatment. And then the last we have on here is going to bring us to some different screens. So we have our UF profiling. Your UF profiling is, of course, doctor ordered, and it is ordered for people who are having issues. So maybe their blood pressure drops at certain times in their treatment, they cramp at certain times in their treatment. We're going to put them on UF profiling and try to eliminate that or shorten it. So you can see some of these are different. What they do is, let's take this one over here. It's got a pretty dramatic drop. You can see that it goes even. So we have that even, we're going to take fluid off, and then all of a sudden you have that drop. We're stopping fluid removal. We're giving them a break. Then you can see that it goes like this. We're going to start back up again for a little bit. It's going to drop. We're going to give them a break. And they all do that. So this one, you can see a little bit of fluid and break, a little bit of fluid and break. They have a break throughout that. We're hoping that by giving them that break, it's going to get their body back a little better, maybe get their blood pressure going again, and we're not going to have that drop. How do you think doctors would know to order one of these?
By our notes.
By our notes. So if we don't take notes and our patients are constantly cramping, if their blood pressure's dropping at, let's say they've come in for the last 2 weeks and their blood pressure drops every third hour. If we don't document that exactly that way, they're not going to know to be able to do any of this. They're not there. They don't see it. And then our SBS. SBS can be used for a couple different things. I said I was going to explain it. It's like, it's more like electrolyte based. What it really has to do with is our salt or our sodium. If someone's cramping a lot, we're going to want to put them on that SBS, or a lot of times they call it sodium modeling. So if I put them on sodium modeling, you can see it's the same thing as the fluid. Here, like the step, I'm gonna normal that saline. Everything's gonna be good. I'm gonna take off sodium, and then all of a sudden I'm gonna have a drop. Here we might be taking it off at an even pace. You can see it's all different. When someone has a lot of salt on, and maybe you've seen it for yourself, especially as you get older, if we take in a lot of salt, it can hold in water. What's our machine doing? Our machine's trying to take off water. So our body, if we're taking in a lot of sodium, our body is fighting against this machine. Our body's saying, nope, we're going to keep that in, And the machine is saying, nope, we're gonna pull it out, and this is how patients cramp. So we're gonna try to even that out. If they're always having cramping issues, we're gonna try to even that out. We also want them to follow diet too. We wanna try to get them to follow a low sodium diet.
And that stuff falls under like patterns and things we're supposed to be watching for.
Right, so if your patient is always cramping, they cramp 3 times in a treatment for the last 2 weeks, we have to document that, because nobody can do anything about that unless we're documenting it. We may have for the whole 2 weeks, we may have treated that patient. We may have. I'm sure we didn't let the patient suffer. We probably gave them medicine, we did whatever we had to do, we lowered their goal, but if we didn't document it, the doctor doesn't know. It's like we did nothing. Diet too, diet's a good one. We're always gonna have patients, you're gonna have patients who are really good patients and they do everything they're supposed to, and you're gonna have patients that are non-compliant. I don't fault those patients, me personally, because I know that there's things that if I had to give up, it's gonna be very hard.
I'd be putting my middle finger up.
When you try a diet, and you know you have your favorite things that you eat every day, or you drink every day, it's torture to try to give those things up. So I don't fault them. I still have to educate them, but I try to sympathize with them because I know what it would be like to give up those types of things. But you will have patients who will come in and they will eat McDonald's or Burger King or whatever. We know how much sodium and things like that, and then it'll be like 2 hours into their treatment and they don't understand why they're cramping or why they don't feel good. And sometimes they just don't believe it. Like sometimes they're just, and you're like, well, it's kind of the food, you got a lot of sodium in there. And then sometimes we have patients who are really trying to do better. They used to eat really bad, and sometimes they're by themselves. A lot of people who are by themselves, they don't like to cook big meals. They get simple little things. So we have people who will go to the healthy choice meals. They're still cramping, they still got a lot of sodium, their sodium's up, and they can't figure out why. And then they say, I don't know, I've been eating better, I went to the healthy choice meals, they're better for you. But anything that is frozen or in a can is full of sodium. So they probably did change. They went from McDonald's or whatever junk they were eating, and now, right, they're trying to eat better, but they just don't know. They need more education. And that's what you kind of educate them on. And that's kind of some of the things that you would back up the dietitian with, because they're always going to forget. And you're just going to back them up and be like, hey, did you ever read how much sodium that has? Things like that. So this is it for our front screen. These trends, you can go to all of these screens and you can read everything individually, because there's different things in different screens. Or you can just go to the trends, and it's going to have everything here for you. So how much heparin was infused, it's going to have your beginning and your ending blood pressure, your UF goal, how much was removed, your concentrates, if you have profiling, your liters of blood removed, like everything is there. But sometimes we like to go, because we like to see everything big. We go when we see our blood pressure big, we go to our home screen, but trends, you can find everything there. Our dialysate screen is exactly that. It's our acid and our bicarb. That's where we're going to put that in. You usually do not have to goof around with these numbers. What the doctor orders, these numbers are what's in your acid, or these electrolytes. You do have to sometimes come over here and change your alarm limits. Depending on what your acid is, sometimes you can go lower. This one we can't go lower. It's not going to let us. If you can change your alarm limits and you can get that conductivity into the green, then you're good to go. Test and options. Step 6 is when we're going to test our machine. So we're gonna do all that stuff, and then in step 6, we're gonna go to the test and option screen, and we're gonna test our machine. All of these things have to pass. If they don't pass, we have to try to see if we can fix whatever didn't pass. If we fixed it, we've done everything we can, we got the most experienced person, come over, look at it, it's not fixable. Something's wrong with the machine. We have to pull this machine, get a new one, and start over again. We can't put a patient on a machine if everything has not passed.
And we're doing this all before we even put patient on.
Yep. So which means, that's another test question, when do we test our machines?
Step 6.
Right, but
Before the
Before
patient.
we want a patient.
before every new patient. Before every new patient. We obviously don't have a computer hookup here, we don't have patients. This over here is gonna be your patient ID. So you can't just put patients anywhere. The patient ID is gonna be in there, that patient that is scheduled for that seat has to be in that seat. Now, that patient doesn't show up, we know somebody needs an extra treatment, we can call them and have them come in, and they can change that. But until somebody changes that, we can't just put anybody there. That person's information is gonna go into somebody else's chart. So, having said that this is hooked up to the computer and it goes in somebody's chart, the doctor knows everything that's going on with the patient. Somewhat. So if your patient's blood pressure drops, the doctor knows. So if the doctor comes and they see that your patient's blood pressure dropped to 80/60, but there's no notes in there next to that blood pressure, what does that tell that doctor?
That you're not making.
Now you're not being responsible.
He's gonna think, well, they're not being responsible, you didn't do anything. Somebody probably did, they just didn't chart it. So it kind of makes it look like we didn't do anything, that pressure drop. He's gonna come over and be like, what's going on with my patient? Low blood pressure, nothing's going on. So that's a way that you get nabbed with your charting, because all of this goes into the machine. All of your blood pressures, your arterial, your venous pressures, everything goes into that machine, into that chart. These are different things. If you have pediatric, we have to put it on pediatric dialysis. If you have a high flux dialyzer, most of your dialyzers now are high flux, they're more efficient. Ours is already on. When you prime and recirc, and then if you're doing a single needle. When you would do a single needle would be on a new fistula. So you have a new fistula, you're gonna use one needle, 17 gauge, and the other one is gonna be attached to their catheter. It's kind of like we're slowly getting that new fistula used to that blood flow, without overwhelming it, because they can be very, very tiny. Heparin, that's where you're gonna put in all your heparin information. And you're gonna get that right from your order. What your rate is. So like this order says, oh, this order, this person's allergic to heparin. So they get flushes. This one has a loading dose of 1,000 and an hourly of 500 units. So your loading dose is going to be your bolus. So that's where I'm going to put my 1,000. As soon as the machine goes on, it's going to give the bolus right away. Your rate is going to be the 500, and then whatever time is. So this patient was 3 hours. That means that 500 cc's is going to go in every hour. And then this one here is kind of the same as the first screen. It's going to tell you how much heparin was given. This is going to be for your crit lines. If you don't have a crit line on your machine, you don't even have to worry about this screen. But you can see it has the volume of blood, it has your QT over V, your blood volume processed. It'll show your blood volume processed, but it won't show any of your test results. Same with this one. Your hemoglobin and your hematocrit unless you have that line, it's not gonna take that automatically. It'll still get your liters processed, it'll show your pressures, and that's about it. This is where you're gonna set your blood pressures. You're gonna set it to doctor's orders. They're gonna have an upper and a lower limit. So if I look at my orders, my systolic, this person's systolic cannot be any greater than 200. So I'm gonna put the upper at 200. If it goes over 200, it's gonna alarm. It's gonna let me know that they're in a dangerous level, and then they can't go less than 90. So my diastolic, my lower is gonna be 90. So anytime in between those ranges, it's gonna alarm. And then here, I'm gonna press this up here for 30 minutes. Doesn't wanna change. There we go. I'm gonna press that for 30 minutes. If you come over at some time, your patient's not feeling good, the blood pressure's low, you gave him some saline, you wanna come back and check it, always change that. Write in your notes that you did what you did, and that you're gonna come back and check it in 10 minutes, and then set your machine for 10 minutes. Things happen. Emergency can come over here, patients call you over, we lose track of 10 minutes. This will automatically take it. If it's still low, it's gonna go off, or if it's lower. So that way, it's kind of like a reminder. If it's good, everything's back to normal, you can put it back to 30. Overwhelmed? No? Good? You can run it? You want to put it in order?
String it.
Yeah, I'll string it.